to set that one. Now if you get a little box that pops up that asks you if you want to reassign the shortcut or you want to ignore the keybind that you just set, tell it to go ahead and reassign the shortcut, because a lot of these shortcuts that I'm setting up, they're assigned for more advanced options that I don't even use, let alone a beginner. So you're not going to miss them. And then the next one is right below that. It's scale layer. It's right below layer to image size. For scale layer, I hit Control-Shift-R, and there's a difference between layers and image, and you'll see that later. But sometimes you got to be careful about which one you're scaling. And there's a couple other useful ones, but for now, that's going to be enough to get us started and enough to get us in trouble. And that should be good. Go ahead and click Close. Alright. And the first thing we're going to do is work with a blank image. Hit Control-N for New. And go ahead and leave it at default settings. For mine, it's 640 by 400. And that'll be fine for now. What I usually do after it opens the palette or image, even if I'm opening an existing image, I grab the drag handle right here in the corner and open more space, because sometimes you'll want to start your tool off of the image so you can drag it into the image, and you can't really do that if you don't have room to click the background behind the image. So go ahead and just drag yourself a little bit more room. Now there's a few things. I'm not going to go through every option of every tool, but I will cover some of the more common options and more important options. Now, as you can see here, the rectangle tool, you should be able to select that just by hitting R on your keyboard. If not, you can click it. The rectangle tool selects a rectangle of an area that you decide. Now, when you click down and drag, that makes your selection when you let go. Well, to keep it in proportion and make it a perfect square, you can hit Shift. You click down, just click down, start dragging, and as you can see, this is not a square, but if you hit Shift, it keeps it in perfect aspect ratio, and you get a perfect square. Now if you hit Control, if you click down and start dragging and hit Control, it will expand unevenly into a rectangle, square, whatever you wind up being, and it will drag out from the middle of the area you clicked on. So I'm not sure if you could see these lines, especially by the time this video is done being transcoded and resized, but I'll go through that again. We click in the middle of the image and then drag over. As you can see, the top left corner is in the middle of the image. Well, if you hit Control, as you drag, the center of your selection is where you clicked at when you hit Control. Now, and remember, Shift, when you click and hit Shift, it turns it into a perfect square. Now, if you hit Control Shift, it gives you a perfect square right from the middle of the image, or right from the center of your click. So your selection is centered where you started your click at, and it's a perfect square. Now, there's three different types of selections as well. For one, you've got a typical selection, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to fill this in with some color so you can see. Alright, now that's a typical selection where you just click down and drag out. Now if you click, now before you click, there's a difference, and by the way, this is one thing I mean to point out. When I told you a moment ago, you hit Shift and click and drag to make a square. Well, you got to be careful and make sure you hit Shift after you start dragging. Same thing with Control, because if you hit Shift or Control before you start dragging, it alters your selection. I'll try to demonstrate the difference. For example, here we'll select this box real quick. Alright, say we want to add to this box without reselecting, and we're going to add an odd shape. Well, if you hold Control down, or I'm sorry, Shift down, before you click, you'll see a plus symbol next to your cursor. And that means you're going to add to this currently enabled selection. So hit Shift, and then click down, and then start dragging another box. And then let go, of your mouse and then let go of shift. And as you can see, you've got an odd looking selection now. It's not a box anymore. It goes up and around and then down, and we could fill that in just for demonstrative purposes. And we've created an odd looking selection. And there's another type now too with using control. Now some people click off the side of the image to deselect, but if you also hit Control Shift A, it deselects everything on the image. Control A will select everything. Control Shift A will deselect everything. Now there's another type of selection. We'll go ahead and select a normal box now and then let go. Now hit Control before you click again and drag that same type of thing we just did a moment ago with the shift. Now the Control takes away from the selection where Shift adds to it. So as you can see now by me filling this in, we have an odd shape selection. That's how you can select multiple parts of an image with only one selection. And that's how you use the rectangle tool. The elliptical tool, let me delete all this. The elliptical tool you get by hitting E. E and R. R is the rectangle, E is the elliptical tool. E and R are pretty much the same thing, except one's for round things and one's for square things. Now, other than that, they are identical. For example, dragging, you will get an oval, as you can see here. Now, dragging, wrong tool. Now, dragging and hitting Shift will give you a perfect circle, as you can see here. And dragging and hitting wrong tool again. Dragging and hitting Control will start will center your selection around the point you originated your click on. For example, clicking here and then dragging here, your top left corner of your selection is in the center of the image where you clicked, where you started your selection. But if you click down then hit Control and start dragging, the center of your selection starts where you clicked, not the top left corner. And then the same principle applies to clicking down and hitting Shift Control. You get a perfect circle instead of an oval, and it's centered where you started your selection at. Now, again, it's really important to understand that you got to hit Shift or Control or both after you've already clicked down, because if you do, you start modifying the selection. For example, we've got a selection right now which is in the center of our image. Well, if we want to add to that selection, we'd hit Shift. We'd hit first go back to our elliptical tool, hit E or Shift, and you'll see the plus symbol, and then click down and then make another selection. And as you can see, you've just added a strange looking selection. Now if you hit Control, and you'll see the minus symbol next to your cursor, and click down and start dragging, you're actually taking away from your selection. So remember, the Shift and Control, their behavior modifies your selection depending on if you hit them before you click or after you click. If you hit Shift or Control before you click, then it modifies the selection in one way or another. If you hit Shift or Control after you click, then it will modify the shape of your, it modifies how your selection is done. If it's kept in perfect proportion for a circle or a square as opposed to an oval or rectangle, and it modifies whether the center of the selection will originate from where you clicked or if that will be the top left corner of the selection. So that's how these selection tools work. The other tool, the other selection tool you've got is a freehand lasso, and it's pretty much self-explanatory. You can click and scribble around and make a half-assed selection. I don't like it. I never use it. It's like gum stuck on the bottom of your shoe. I hate it. Anyway, the other one is the magic wand or the fuzzy select tool. I don't like it either. One of them that I do use often in certain images that I'm editing is the select by color tool. When you use the select by color tool, and it's probably a good idea if I just open another image, hit Control O. select my color tool that I'm getting ready to show you. What it